Hi guys! In this video, I'm going to talk about drug formulary. Please refer to your M5 revision notes, section B1. To begin with, we look at what exactly drug formulary is. According to source E in your notes, it was implemented in Hong Kong by the Hospital Authority in 2005. It is believed that through standardization of the drug policy and utilization in all HA hospitals and clinics, 透過統一公立醫院同診所嘅藥物政策同用藥咧 ，patients can have equal access to cost-effective drugs of proven safety and efficacy， 確保病人可以公平咁獲處方具成本效益同埋經驗證安全同有效嘅藥嘅。At present, there are 4 categories of drugs in the formulary. The first category, general drugs, are those with well-established indications and cost-effectiveness. 第一類通用藥物係經證實對病人有關臨床情況適用同有效嘅藥物 ，and they are provided at standard fees and charges in public hospital and clinics. And in other words, patients can purchase general drugs at a standard charge of $10 for up to 16 weeks treatment. 咁即係話佢標準收費啦。咁即係16個星期咧，就俾10蚊港幣，咁就叫做一個攞藥嘅價錢啦。The second category, special drugs, are provided as standard fees and charges in public hospital and clinics too, but patients must meet specified clinical conditions. 第二類嘅專用藥物咧，就係要有醫生去俾呢個特定臨床應用處方嘅，咁就有處方咧，就俾標準收費啦。咁如果冇醫生咁樣去處方呢個特定臨床應用嘅話咧，咁就要自己俾錢啦。The third category are drugs proven to be of significant clinical benefits but extremely expensive for HA to provide as part of its standard services. A safety net is provided through relevant funds such as Samaritan Fund or Care Fund to subsidize the drug expenses of patients who have financial difficulties, well up to 70%. 第三類咧就係一啲本身隻藥太貴咧 ，HA 都唔能夠咁樣去資助得起嘅咧，咁都有顯著療效嘅藥。咁就係有個叫安全網去幫啲人啦。安全網嘅話咧就係要申請嘅。咁如果係你負擔得起唔使申請，咁咪自己俾錢去買咯。咁有一啲有經濟有困難嘅話咧，就交好多文件去申請呢啲嘅撒瑪利亞基金啊、關愛基金啊嗰度去即係用一個優惠啲嘅價錢去買啲藥啦，咁資助嘅話最多係資助到嗰隻藥嘅70%到啦，但係其實你買嗰啲咁貴嘅藥咧，下下都慢慢聲咁樣去嘅，咁70%資助咗，剩翻落嚟嗰啲都係一個好龐大嘅價錢嚟㗎。The last category are drugs with preliminary medical evidence only. Drugs with marginal benefits over available alternatives but at significant higher costs, and lifestyle drugs.最尾嗰啲咧，即係淨係得初步醫療驗證嘅藥啦，又或者有替代藥物俾佢平啦，或者一啲生活方式嘅藥物，例如減肥藥之類嘅。Source D in your notes shows you currently general drugs and special drugs account for 82% and 18% in the drug formulary respectively. So how to determine what drugs should be covered by the formulary?We did a class activity together in order to understand the factors affecting our decisions. Out of the 6 drugs given, a number of you thought half of the drugs should be covered by the formulary due to the prevalence of the disease or the number of beneficiaries in Hong Kong. 上堂俾嗰6隻藥俾你哋玩呢，去諗究竟如果你制定呢個藥物名冊嘅話，有邊啲藥物你會擺佢入去，咁就可以用呢一個標準嘅價錢嚟買。點解啦？咁好多人都話大概有一半藥你都覺得要嘅，但其實咧實際上咧裡面得一隻係而家個藥物名冊係包咗嘅。好多人都認為只要個普遍性啊，嗰種病嘅普遍性好高，咁又或者香港受惠人好多，咁就應該列入去呢個名冊啦。但係其實政府仲有其他嘅考慮因素嘅。 Now, in fact, only 1 out of the 6 drugs is currently put under the list of center fees and charges, that is, drug B. So through this activity, you were prompted to think about the consideration of the government, the patients, and the general public. Source F shows you the government's considerations. It would be impossible and impractical for public hospitals in any country to provide a full range of drugs. So what the government can do is to make rational choices on the best available drugs to achieve rational use of public resources. Then how to be rational? The last sentence says, taking into account their disease prevalence, available evidence on efficacy and safety, and comparative cost effectiveness. So let me repeat, to the government, rational use of public resources is the most important. Source G shows you a patient's group's accusation. Look at the second line. Only making changes to the prescription when there is an effect on the patient's primary conditions. And lines 5 and 6 force patients with financial difficulties to choose general drugs with poorer benefits and greater side effects, resulting in prolonged treatment and higher demand for medical services. This echoes the definition of special drugs. So if the patient cannot meet certain conditions, for example, tumor in the brain, tumor means 肿瘤啊, the best medication for them won't be subsidized, and they have 2 options, either buy the drugs they want at their own expenses or rely on less effective drugs which may come with greater side effects. Here's an example taken from the Pearl Report.
唔明白我嘅人個個都可能以為我係一個有咗 BB 嘅媽媽，但係唔該唔係啊！我唔係有咗 BB， 我係因為呢個病生晒太多腫瘤，生到而家個肚大到係咁樣，我真係唔想死，求下你哋幫下我哋啦！
This April, TSC patient Chi Yin-lan appealed to legislators to help with medication costs. She died 12 days later from oversized kidney tumors. She was 36. The hospital authority has a drug formulary that categorizes prescription drugs for subsidy in public health care.
When it comes to life-saving medication, any wait is too long. The tumor or the sickness could develop very quickly. When it comes to what sort of medication should be included or listed in the drug formulary and how these medications can be utilized, the whole decision-making process should be made public, and patients should have a chance to participate.
In July, after Chi's death, the government categorized the drug mTOR inhibitor for subsidy, but only patients with a special brain tumor called SIGA can apply after an assessed review.
This drug initially was only for the brain tumor, even in the USA. Now, there are clinical very good evidence to suggest the brain tumor and the kidney tumor arising from patient with TSC can be effectively suppressed by this mTOR inhibitor. For Hong Kong, we are maybe around 7 years delay.
The hospital authority says,
it is anticipated that everolimus for treating TSC patients with renal angiomyolipoma can be included under the Samaritan Fund coverage by the end of 2017.
The patients and doctors who've met with the HA say they have been told this pertains only to patients with renal tumors of at least 3 centimeters. Rebecca Yun's daughter Michelle Lam has a kidney tumor caused by TSC.
She can't benefit because her kidney tumor is only 1.2 centimeters. Michelle can't meet the 3 centimeter requirement.
Michelle also has brain tumors, but they are not SIGA. Rebecca has formed a support group called TSC Association. It has 38 members.
Even though the government has put mTOR inhibitor in the drug formulary, it set too many criteria. Only half of us can benefit. We've been fighting for so long, I'm frustrated.
This is a monogenetic disorder, so why we have to look at each individual organ. and implement treatment. So if you find that this treatment is already effective, and actually you should not wait until it grows to a certain size.
Especially for very young patients who haven't got tumors and mental damage yet. The drug can help them control seizures. They can live much better lives.
Michelle was diagnosed with TSC at 9 months old.
Her seizures were nightmares for me. The worst was 160 seizures in a month.
When Michelle was 20 months old, Rebecca took her to US for surgery to remove tumors in her brain.
I should give her a chance to live at any cost. Before we left for the operation, we took family portraits as a memento. I was very scared she wouldn't make it back.
The surgery cured Michelle's seizures, but 3 years later, she relapsed with 10 to 20 seizures a month.
This is a genetic event. It's ongoing. So you cover one piece today, the other piece will grow subsequently. So this is not a good strategy to handle this disease.
It was like going from heaven to hell. At the time, I thought technology was advancing. One day there would be medicine to treat her illness.
At 19, Michelle is in Form 5 at a special school and has the intelligence of a 7-year-old. She's in Professor Chan's mTOR-inhibited clinical trial. Her mom says the drug reduces the size of tumors, the number of seizures, and enhances her mental ability. Speaking and singing. Enjoying.
Thanks to Ms. Ho for discovering her talent in drawing. Many people praise her. It actually boosts her confidence. Her studies have improved a lot. Now you teach her a few times and she can write the words. I don't expect her to be very normal, but any little improvement is precious.
Professor Chan's trial will end in 2018, and patients won't get free mTOR inhibitors anymore.
I hope the Hong Kong government can make it a subsidized drug soon for any diagnosed patient.
I must try my best to fight for her. How can she know how to fight it for herself?
Coming up.
Okay. Next, Source H talks about how patients with financial difficulties cannot afford it, and they blame the government for taking price as the primary consideration rather than the patient's genuine needs. Source I shows you a recent news about how a patient suffering from a rare disease died because of the lack of accessible and affordable drugs. Now you're ready to look at the main inquiry. Identify and explain 2 conflicts that might arise among different stakeholders from expanding the coverage of the drug formulary. To review the skills to answer this question type, please refer to last-minute notes on answering exam questions, type 19. Now, here are some samples of your work. Most of you were able to satisfy the structural requirement. However, when it comes to explanation, you may show partial understanding of the issue. Now, let's take a look at an argument written by Leonard. Yes, during the lesson I've given you hints like 2 stakeholders may have different interests, but when you talk about patients with rare disease emphasizing their personal interests and the government taking care of the public interest, the point of conflict is still not clear. So it will be better for you to define the point of conflict as what drugs should be covered by the formulary under generic drugs, or the requirements patients should meet to benefit from Samaritan Fund or Care Fund. So line 5, no funds is inaccurate. There are funds, but the patient's applicant needs to meet requirements related to the income or stage of their disease. It is also wrong to say the government cannot spend funds on the minority, because it is actually the government's role to strike a balance in responding to the demand of both the majority and the minority. The argument written by Ray has greater room for improvement, as he didn't give details related to the drug formulary, and when he talked about what the government thinks, he mentioned that the government has to consider the pharmaceutical companies' interests, which is not true. It is always the pharmaceutical companies that aim at getting benefits from the government, which is the biggest client or customer. Frank mentioned the government chooses drugs that treat quote and unquote popular disease, which is again not accurate. Please refer to source F for the government's considerations. A lot of you talked about taxpayers have to pay more tax, which is not convincing based on the current situation in Hong Kong, in which we have budget surplus in recent years. It's more about rational spending we've mentioned earlier that can benefit everyone. Only LKM wrote his argument based on the notion that with the same amount of medical budget, the government tends to spend the money on subsidizing more cost-effective drugs, which can benefit more people, rather than subsidizing patent drugs of high prices, which reduce the number of beneficiaries. Now, here is a modified answer. Words underlined in orange are related to conflict, and I've also used different colors to show you how much you have to write for each stakeholder. So here the first pair of stakeholders, patients groups or patients with rare disease, or and the government. It's stated in the first sentence, and this is the point of conflict. Patients with rare diseases or patients groups support the expansion of drug formulary coverage. So to state the stance of them, they think that the new drugs or the latest drugs should be added to the formulary out of humanitarian concerns, so that the government subsidy can make these drugs accessible to patients in need. Without the government subsidy, new drugs which treat rare diseases are usually pricey, and then you have to explain why, because of patent rights and the lack of competition of alternative drugs in the market. For example, they urge the government to introduce the medication for treating TSC, 結節性硬化症, to the formulary so that patients can obtain medication at standard prices and do not have to bear the high cost of $20,000 a month. So please make good use of the given sources. Don't just say the argument without giving supporting evidence. However, the government does not support the introduction of new drugs which do not comply with the current principles that govern which drugs should get onto the formulary. Then according to source F, government has to make rational choices on the best available drugs and to achieve rational use of public resources. Therefore, when it comes to the use of public funds, the government has to take into account the disease prevalence, the available evidence on efficacy, safety, and comparative cost effectiveness. Before introducing a drug to the formulary, it cannot simply allocate a huge sum of money to overpriced drugs produced by pharmaceutical companies, sacrificing the benefits of the other patients with more common disease. In the case of introducing the medication for treating TSC, there is only preliminary medical evidence, and so the government put the drugs under the self-finance category. When the patients groups and the government have different criteria or principles regarding which drugs should get onto the formulary, the patients groups often blame the government for showing little concerns towards patients with rare diseases and hold rallies to put pressure on the government. So you see in the last few lines, you have to elaborate on what sort of conflicts can be seen, or you may describe it. instead of just quoting the last sentence or concluding sentence here, thus conflicts might arise between patients with rare diseases or patients groups and the government. This is the first argument. As you talk about something related to what drugs should be covered by the formulary, and then in the second argument you may talk about something not so practical or specific. You talk about something related to perception. So the second pair is patient groups and the general public or ordinary citizens. So they regard the fairness in different ways. So patients with rare diseases or patients groups support the expansion of drug formulary coverage because they think when the chances of obtaining the drugs they need is equal to the chances of other people can have access to drugs listed on the formulary, this is being fair. But when they have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for a single course, which means 16 weeks, those from the low-income families can hardly afford it, and this would delay the most appropriate time they should receive medical treatments, and in most cases causing death. This is not fair to them. However, some ordinary citizens think fairness should mean the same amount of public fund being allocated to the various services of the healthcare system. If costly drugs treating rare disease can enter the formulary easily, this means a huge amount of financial resources will be drawn away by a few thousands of people from the medical expenses on the majority of people not suffering from rare diseases. To some ordinary citizens, this is not fair, and they voice their objection towards the expansion of the drug formulary. Thus, conflicts might arise between patients with rare diseases or patients groups and the government. Now, talking about drug formulary, which involves the government spending public fund on certain drugs, is also useful to take a look at source B. And the first question, which requires you to describe or identify the trend in expenditure on health. So you have a revision on this question type. So when you answer this question, please refer to your last minute notes on answering exam question. You refer to type 2 statistical analysis section 2.1.2. for the structure or the requirement to answer this question. So basically you cannot simply just say, okay, private expenditure is increasing, public expenditure on health is increasing too. That's it. No. Okay. So yes, you can see increasing trend, but remember you need to talk about the overall trend first, and then you take a look at the details. Remember to cite the exact figures given to you in the graph. So for example, when you talk about the overall expenditure, look at the first bar. You see it's around 67 or 68, and the unit is billion Hong Kong dollars. So in 2004, the expenditure on health was around 68, let's say put it 70 Hong Kong billion dollars or 70 billion Hong Kong dollars. And then you look at the last bar. In 2033, it's estimated that the total expenditure on health will increase to 315 billion Hong Kong dollars. And after citing these two figures, you need to talk about the magnitude of change, right? Don't just do subtraction. You need to do some calculation. So you divide 315 by 67.8, so you get around 4.6 times. Okay, so this is the first trend. You refer to the overall expenditure. And then you take a look at the individual expenditure. So now you see there are different colors in each bar, and you're going to talk about the proportion of private expenditure to public expenditure. So from 2004 or in 2004, private expenses to public expenses on health is half, right? So 50-50. And then in 2033, private expense or expenditure on health is projected to take up 2/5 of the total, whereas the public expenditure on health is projected to take up 3/5 of the total expenditure. And to put these two pieces of information together, you can come up with the conclusion that there will be an increasing share of public expenditure on health. Okay, so two trends. One about the overall increase in the total expenditure on health, and the other is about the share of private and public expenditure on health. What about the causes of these trends? So here I've given you three. The first one, it may due to the increasing healthcare needs, like aging population, and then increasing disease occurrence. The second point, rising medical costs due to advances in medical technologies and public expectation of healthcare to keep up with such advances. We call this medical inflation. And medical inflation occurs because there's something called drug patenting, right? 藥物專利. The third point, improved quality in citizens' lives and higher demand for disease diagnosis and treatment. And then it's also worth noticing the impacts of these trends, mostly to the public. Increase the burden for the government to bear heavier public expenditure on health expenditure growing faster than the economy in GDP, increasing burden on future generations, and the government may not be able to sustain investment in the healthcare facilities and equipment, while grassroots citizens may be denied access to appropriate medical services. And for the private expenses, increase in private expenditure on health will result in heavier financial burdens for individuals and families, which may undermine the quality of lives, etc.